It was called the mansion tax.
Yeah.
They didn't read the 29 pages. Should we tax the rich to pay for affordable housing? Yes or no? Well, yes. People are out there lying, saying it's created 10,000 jobs, which is absurd. When Measure ULA took effect, transaction volume in the city of Los Angeles above $5 million, where Measure ULA works, fell by 50%. Well, they projected it would be up to $1 billion a year. It's averaged about 300-ish million.
And you said 900,000?
900,000 is all that's been spent on affordable housing. That has grave impacts to our economy that the people who drafted Measure ULA did not fully account for.
What's the early polling?
What I've heard is that this is polling extremely high.
Real quick, before we hop into today's episode, I am so excited to share that we have a sponsor for today's episode, and that is AI for CRE Collective. This is actually a community that Jay Keller and myself started because we were tired of getting left behind with AI. We're nerds about it. We love to dive into it. Jake is a master at crafting these prompts, and I'm very heavily invested in trying to be a better broker and use all of the tech and tools that I can to make myself just that much better. And I will tell you this, since starting this community and exploring the workflows and the things, how to use AI effectively in my business, 25 listings at the moment. We're closing 4 or 5 deals a month. It's been incredible. So if you want to learn, if you're in commercial real estate, how to use AI in your business, whether you're a property manager, a broker, an investor, really anyone, we have a huge group, over 400 people in this community. And the website, if you want to go check it out, is AI4CREcollective.com. So appreciate you guys. Now back to the episode. Welcome to the podcast. My name is Taylor Avakian, and I'm here with my esteemed guest, Mott Smith. Mott, thanks for being here, man.
How you doing, Taylor?
Good. Appreciate you having me. So we were just talking before this about you started in 2003 in the city of LA. Tell me about what it was like in 2003 versus what it's like today investing in LA.
Right on. Well, actually, I mean, to be fair, I started, even before then. When I was 16, I got obsessed with real estate development, and I used to write fan letters to one of my favorite developers who was a really cool guy and wrote me back. And
who was it?
This guy named Ira Yellen.
Okay.
And he was one of the first. So he had been a shopping mall developer, and then he was like, you know what, we need to do something for downtown. And he bought the Bradbury building, he bought the Grand Central Market, he bought the $1 Million Theater. And he was one of the first kind of West Side people to be like, let's make something of this. And when I moved to LA when I was 15 and a half from DC, I got obsessed with Ira and everything he was doing and historic preservation and Broadway and all this. And and he was great and a total inspiration. I got my start in real estate, really in public real estate. I worked for the LA school district when it was going through a massive building boom.
Okay.
And it was my job to do all kinds of things. But among the things I was trying to do was public-private partnerships to build schools, because the district couldn't keep up. We were building 150 schools. And so I got to know CEQA through that. I got to know deal making through that. I got to know a whole bunch of things. And then in 2003 is when I started my own company with my business partner, Brian Albert. And yeah, it's different now.
What prompted you to start your own thing? Was it just you always wanted to be an entrepreneur? You wanted to follow in Ira's footsteps, or was it just like, I see the vision, I see what happens? What made you want to take that step?
So I'm a city guy. I love cities. I love everything about them. I love what I really love is it's a big word, but generativity. I love the idea that things are possible, and you don't know what's around the next corner in a good way, maybe in a bad way too, but in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
And they attract people, they attract talent, they attract possibility, and I love that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be somebody who helped make that happen. And I thought about being an architect, and then every architect I met was like, don't do it. I thought about being a planner, and I saw what urban planning has become, which is really just a finger wag at the business community, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
And in the old days, planners would make cities, and if that's what they still did, I might have done that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't want to be in the position of just trying to tell other people what to do. And the advice I got early in my career was, if you've got a vision, you shouldn't go be a consultant, because a consultant's job is to help the clients with their vision. So if you've got a vision, go be the client. And that's kind of what's driven me this whole time.
And which led you into starting the development company, and then eventually Amped Kitchens, which we can talk about later. And then and you're also an adjunct professor at
USC.
the MRED. Can you tell me a little bit about that? I want to talk about Amped Kitchens real quick.
Yeah.
Can you explain to me what Amped Kitchens is and why you started it?
Totally. So Amped Kitchens is a builder, developer, owner, operator of large commercial kitchen complexes.
Okay.
And so a commercial kitchen is exactly what it sounds like. It's a place where food companies can do their thing, and a complex is just a bunch of them in one building. And so we were actually, as far as the first people to do this.
When was the first one?
We started our company back in 2012. We opened our first building in 2015. We bought it in 2014, built it out, and then opened in 2015.
Did you see something in the market where there was a gap for that, or were you fascinated by food? Was it like Uber? What like sparked the idea for this?
So all the above. So there was no Uber Eats, right? Really, at the time, as far as I know. We weren't even thinking about ghost kitchens. We weren't thinking about food delivery. In fact, we're still not. I mean, we own close to 200 kitchens in LA and Chicago now.
Wow.
And I think one or two of our tenants are doing food delivery. Almost everybody's doing some form of production.
Got it.
And that's what we started at doing. That's what we're still doing. And what inspired it was really three things. It was, first of all, if I'm being honest, desperation, because we had been doing urban infill development and small urban housing projects and that sort of thing. And then when the Great Recession happened, we were really lucky that we got out of our last project and had a little bit of money. And Brian and I were like, okay, this is great. We're going to go out in the market and do all these deals. And it turns out, first of all, that's what everybody with any money was thinking. They're all thinking like, oh shit, this, can I say? I don't know if I can say that.
Yeah, no, you can say whatever you want.
Everybody was like, I've got a little bit of money and the market's dead. Let's go buy some bargains. And so, what that meant was in Palmdale, nothing was happening. But in urban LA, which people still believed in, even during the Great Recession, we were fighting with Wall Street companies like Lennar over 15-unit projects.
No way.
Seriously. And what we learned back then is that there are different kinds of development companies. There are the kinds that are mostly about putting their massive store of capital to work. And then there are the people who have to make money. And Brian and I were definitely in the you have to make money camp. And so we couldn't compete with guys that just had to place money. And so we would meet every week for dinner and brainstorm about what we're going to do next. And we would meet at this friend of ours restaurant in Hollywood. And he came over and sat with us one night. He was like, dude, it sucks. I know all these amazing bakers in Los Angeles, and I'm not allowed to buy their bread because they can't get a wholesale license. And we're like, tell us more about that. and he was like, yeah, you need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars upgrading your kitchen and blah, blah, blah. We're like, all right. Because we had always been very attracted to opportunities for what we call regulatory innovation. So like we were the first company to bring a tract map under the small lot ordinance in the city of LA to market. We've done work with charter schools and new markets tax credits when they were a new thing. We really like kind of being at that edge because we're small, we can be innovative.
You're nimble, you're quick. You want to get ahead of the curve.
Exactly. And so we were like, this sounds like something. Like there are people out there that want to sell bread to restaurants, and there's a regulatory barrier to that. Maybe there's a project there. And so we called up, the first call was actually to the health department. And I called up the head of environmental health, who I actually had known from a previous job. And I said, I want to build a place where small bread companies can easily get their wholesale license without investing $100,000. And he said, congratulations, you're the first developer to call me about this that I haven't shut down for doing it illegally first. And I'm like, all right, let's go. Yeah. And so there were no models for this. So there was a model for shared kitchens. There was a model for rent it for 4 hours. And there were a couple that were gray market in LA. The oldest one I could find is actually in Honolulu, Hawaii from the 1980s. Somebody opened one up.
Wow.
And that's fine. And that's good if you're doing like farmers markets or catering or stuff like that. But there was no place where you could get a wholesale license because that's the next level up of regulation. And we spent a little bit over a year working with the health department on creating regulations for a building where you could have multiple wholesale kitchens sharing some resources. And we bought a building based on that. We used new markets tax credits to help finance it, and we opened up in 2015. And that at that time there was one other building in Los Angeles that was one of these sort of gray market things. I think they had 4 kitchens in it. They'd been operating like that for years.
Mm-hmm.
And today there are 41 buildings like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Geez, you were kind of the spearhead to really show people that there's a business model in this. What is it? How does the business model work? So you bought the building, right? You retrofitted it. You got the wholesale license for the building, I guess you could say. And then do you charge these distributors or these producers on like a lease, like they get a certain amount of the kitchen, or is it an hourly thing? How does it work?
It's a great question. I mean, since we did this, um, there are tons of models around the country. The way it's kind of evolved, there are basically now like 2 sort of categories. There are the hourly kitchens,
Okay.
which we're really not. And there's some great ones in town, like Crafted Kitchens is a great one. The Kitchen Terminal is a great one. If you're looking to get 16 hours a month, fully equipped, that's where you go. Our model is much more like an apartment. You rent it. It's got your name on the front. You bring your own furniture, your own equipment,
Got it.
your own thing, and you pay us rent, and that's it.
Interesting. And how many do you have right now?
We've got 3 buildings and close to 200 kitchens.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeez. How big are these buildings?
Our 2 LA buildings are about 60,000 square feet apiece.
Okay.
Our Chicago building's 114,000.
Why did you go to Chicago?
That's also a great question. One, we love Chicago, and Chicago is a great food city. 2, from an economics perspective, it's actually the largest food manufacturing center in America. Interestingly, LA has more small food manufacturers, so LA is actually a better market for our type of thing than Chicago is. But food generally is huge in Chicago because of where it is relative to all the distribution networks
Got it.
and its traditions. And then third, and this is no small part of it, the mayor asked us to come to Chicago. And so we're like, whatever Mayor Rahm says, you do, I hear. So we
Yeah.
did it.
Interesting. And okay, that's awesome. And are you planning on trying to expand this continuously? Like, what's the plan for Amped Kitchens? Is this where most of your time goes, I guess, right now?
It's where I mean, my time is that, and then my civic kind of
Got it.
volunteer activities.
Okay.
And my family, of course.
Yes, of
Yeah.
course.
We are looking to expand. I mean, COVID threw a bit of a wrench into it.
Mm-hmm.
And also, we're kind of waiting for the market to sort itself out a little, because it is 2021 was a peak year for construction of multi-tenant kitchen buildings. Everybody decided we got a warehouse that's underperforming, so let's put kitchens in. Most people don't know how to operate them,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to say this too loudly, but they're not all gonna make it.
Got it.
And so our expansion strategy is a combination of thinking about markets where we want to grow and thinking about opportunities to buy existing places.
So what makes you, because you are very an advocate for or against a lot of things that are pro-housing, right? So is that
I'm for pro.
you're for pro-housing, excuse me. Yeah, against Measure ULA and things like that, that stymie housing.
Yes.
Is that just because you started in that business, or what because you're in the kitchen industrial space right now?
That's what's my paycheck. Yeah.
Right? And so what makes you so passionate about the housing part?
Well, I've always admired people, developers like Ira, an example of this, who are civically active, who are voices in the conversation. Um, it's far too often conversations about development. Right? So I mean, development is the bleeding edge of change, physical change, social change. And as developers, it's kind of our job to be protagonists in that. And it's also, so as protagonists, we get the downside, we get the upside, we bear the moral responsibility for what we do. And which means that the business attracts people like Moses Kagan, who is one of the most ethical, conscientious people I know.
Good friend
And
of ours.
and it attracts sociopaths who just, are willing to do
Yeah.
that stuff. It doesn't matter to them.
Yeah.
And so, so much of the conversation about change, about development, is dominated by people who want to, kind of dip their hand in, but don't want to be that moral protagonist. So advocates and extortionists and good and bad. And developers, the people who again have to live or die by what happens, are usually so they're usually so vulnerable, frankly, to the next 6 months, that it's tough for them to speak up in a way that talks about the market generally or policy generally, because they need that next project to go.
Got
They're
it.
going to lose their shirt. I'm very lucky in a way that I've been there. I've done the housing. I've got the scars to prove it. I now teach about it at USC. I'm chairman of the board of a group called the Council of Infill Builders, which is a nonprofit that's all, urban developers. So I get to be part of the conversation from a position of experience and knowledge. I mean, I'm by no means the greatest expert out there, but I have some knowledge and experience, and I can do it without having to worry about my next deal getting tanked because of what I say.
Got it.
And that is like so many people. So many people are having private conversations about what City of LA is doing wrong, and a lot of them can't say that stuff publicly because they're afraid of getting on somebody's bad side.
Got it. So you have the luxury of it really not affecting your business because it's a different business. So you feel, one, you've been there, done that, and there's a responsibility for you being an advocate because this is something that you're passionate about.
100%.
Let's talk about ULA.
Okay, let's go.
All right. So I just read today, and again, you posted something about there's language to repeal it. But for people who don't know, and for people who are listening, not in the city of LA, can you please just give a quick, what is ULA? Why did it happen? And where are we at today?
Okay. So let's start with the big idea that it's really, there's a lot of there's a lot of need for help for people who don't have the incomes to pay for what housing costs right now. And there are a bunch of different philosophies of how you do that. Some people say we need to give people universal basic income. Some people say we need to give people vouchers like Section 8. Some people say we need to build buildings with units that are reserved for people at a certain income level. And all of that stuff takes money, and finding sources of that money is really hard. And so many people out there have been advocating for what they call mansion taxes. And there are mansion taxes all over the country, from New Jersey to California and everywhere in between. And the idea of a mansion tax is that there is residential, so very expensive residential real estate, mansions, let's call them single family homes, about $5 million. Those are sort of they're a luxury consumer good. Sure, you can buy them as an investment, but most people buying a $10 million house are buying it for some vanity reason or consumer reason or whatever it may be. And so the theory goes, they're rich people, and in certain circles, it's popular to say we should tax the rich, and it's not really going to have much of a cost on society, because if somebody at that income level is paying a little bit more for a $10 million house, who cares? And it can generate a lot of money for these social goods, like helping low-income people who need housing. And that's all well and good. But, what Measure ULA did, which was kind of a riff on what San Francisco did with their Prop C back in 2018, was they kind of defined mansion very broadly as any property over $5 million. And so that means that instead of just taxing the rich guy who's buying a $5 million house, they're also taxing the small business person who's trying to build an apartment building, which is going to cost more than $5 million, or the person who's trying to reposition a vacant office building at more than $5 million, or frankly, even the person who tried to develop a multifamily property, couldn't make it work, and had to sell it at a loss. That person is getting taxed under Measure ULA because they defined mansion very, very broadly. And what this has done was, well, first of all, it again, the theory behind mansion taxes is we can take a consumer luxury good and tax it at no cost to society with great benefit to society. And they added in all of these investment properties, office buildings, apartment buildings, movie studios, manufacturing centers, even affordable housing that's not owned by nonprofits. All of that now is in this bucket, and it's getting taxed at between 4 and 5.5%. And that has grave impacts to our economy that the people who drafted Measure ULA did not fully account for. And here's the thing. It was a 29-page law that was put before voters in 2022. They knew it was called the mansion tax. Nobody read all 29 pages before deciding to vote yes or not. They just said, should we tax the rich to pay for affordable housing? Yes or no? Well, yes, obviously.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because Measure ULA is so tightly crafted, it can't really be fixed by the City Council of Los Angeles. Now, I should say what needs to be fixed about it.
Yeah.
Okay. So the theory was from the drafters that, again, properties over $5 million, the economy will figure it out. The prices will adjust. The tax will just become part of the underwriting. It'll work. Well, it turns out that's not true. My colleague at UCLA, Mike Manville, and I wrote a paper published by the Lewis Center at UCLA. You can download it. It's called The Unintended Consequences of Measure ULA, where we did a few things. We reviewed literature on other transfer taxes, and it turns out that pretty much every other transfer tax that's ever existed has had a persistent, measurable, suppressive effect on transactions.
Wonder why.
I wonder why. You make something more expensive, you're going to get less of it. And we looked specifically at Measure ULA. Commonwealth Title, who's an awesome company, provided us with 5 years of complete data on every transaction in LA County. And so we could look before Measure ULA, after Measure ULA. We could look inside City of Los Angeles, outside City of Los Angeles, where there is no Measure ULA, and look at the difference. And what we found was that, property transaction volume basically moves as in the inverse of interest rates. The lower the interest rates, the more transactions you get. The higher the interest rates, the fewer transactions you get. And what we found was property above 5 million and below 5 million, in LA, outside of LA, before Measure ULA happened, it was just the inverse of interest rates. And then when Measure ULA took effect, transaction volume in the city of Los Angeles above $5 million, where Measure ULA works, fell by 50% more than the county. And this does not require any kind of genius statistical analysis. You look at the graph and you can see it. And it's now been 2 years since Measure ULA took effect, and the effect has not reduced. It is still a persistent 50% reduction.
Jeez.
And so that means that brokers aren't making money.
Yeah.
It means that vacant office buildings are not getting repositioned. Movie studios, the ones that are in process, they're happening. The ones that are maybe going to happen, not going to happen anymore. Massive impact on multifamily. I mean, multifamily has just been absolutely crushed and
demolished.
And the backers of Measure ULA, who don't really want to hear this, unfortunately, because there are people like me who are somewhat sympathetic to the idea of transfer taxes and just want it done right. They're kind of putting their fingers in their ears and say, "There's no problem here. The market's going to adjust. It's all going to be fine." And it's not.
No,
it's really not. And multifamily, multifamily permitting in Los Angeles has fallen off. I forget the exact number. It's something like 60% since all of this has happened.
Yep.
And one of the things that the backers of things like Measure ULA are relying on is they're looking at entitlement activity and saying, well, if people are asking for permission to, get entitlements, which for those who don't know, that's permission to ask permission for building permits. It's not building permits. Entitlement activity has slowed, but it hasn't fallen off a cliff like that. But the problem is, you can't live in an entitlement. You can only live in a built project that got a permit. And so, programs in Los Angeles to boost entitlement activity excuse me, like the TOC program, the ED1 program. This is word, alphabet soup for the average
Yeah.
person listening to this. Um, they were touted as highly successful programs, but ED1, a USC analysis said that only 10% of the units approved under ED1 actually saw any stage of construction. So we cannot live in entitlements, and unfortunately, that's what the backers of things like ULA think we can do.
So I know Culver City has a transfer tax, but
Yeah.
theirs is tiered. So basically, it's taxed above the amount. So let's say it's $8 million in the city of Culver City, and it's taxed on the price above that, right? Which seems like a better version, and that was put in before Measure ULA, wasn't it?
Yeah. Culver City's transfer tax is not perfect, but it is a lot better than Measure ULA for the reason that you say. The technical term is it's marginal. So just like an income tax.
Yeah.
Like
Okay.
the way Measure ULA is written, it's got what we call cliffs. So if you are below the threshold, you pay no Measure ULA tax, and if you're above the threshold, you're now paying $200,000+, which is insane because you can imagine a world where income tax isn't marginal. Like now it is, but imagine if like you were making $99,000, and then if you get $1 more at $100,000, suddenly you're in a different tax bracket. Everybody say, no, thank you. I don't want that raise.
Yeah.
That's basically what Measure ULA did. They say, no, people are saying, no, thank you. I don't want to sell because I don't want to go into this realm where I'm starting to pay money that I wouldn't otherwise have
Makes
to.
no sense.
Makes no sense.
All the conversations I have are about how to get around ULA anyways. Like
Yes, exactly.
that you open yourself up to loopholes and people trying to figure out gray areas, which probably is not good for anyone, to try to skirt around this tax. It's like if your building is going to sell for 5.3, no, we're not going to sell. There's going to be some creativeness that's going to go on to get that below that threshold.
Or $4.9 million plus a few, sports cars. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. Like literally, it blows my mind that people thought this was something that made sense. So then what can we do about it? Because I just read, again, you said that there's language for 2026 for a repeal of this, or like what is the upland loophole?
Well, okay, so I'm part of an organization that is trying to get a negotiated fix to Measure ULA because it's got several big problems. I mean, what we would like to see is waivers for new construction, meaning if it was built in the last 15 years, this is sort of like what Culver City did, a model of that. You don't pay any transfer tax because we don't want people to stop investing, and we don't want people who are building stuff in order to sell to a long-term owner. We don't want that long-term owner to stop buying. We want that chain to work. And we believe that a 15-year waiver would, by the way, it would preserve 87% of the revenues of Measure ULA if we did this, and it would largely restore development activity. So we don't see much downside to fixing the market like this. The other thing that we'd like to see is right now, people aren't talking about this, but the Measure ULA money it's very, very difficult to spend on what it was intended to be spent on. It was supposed to provide relief for tenants, so it's doing that. But most of it was supposed to go to new affordable housing. And
development of new affordable
housing, correct. Development and acquisition and all the other things. The problem is Measure ULA was written by people without adequate consultation with lenders and developers of affordable housing. So it has built into it these very, very, all right. So Measure ULA has built into it really tight restrictions about what you can do Measure ULA has built into it really strict rules about covenants and other financing elements, which in the abstract seem fine, but when you dive a little deeper, you see that it actually conflicts with the rules of the big lenders like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Oh, wow.
And so people have had a ton of trouble, layering Measure ULA money in with other financing sources. And
real quick, so was the money supposed to be given to like HACLA and these nonprofits, or where was it supposed to be distributed? Or does the city have HACLA is typically the one who goes and buys on behalf of the city, right?
Well, HACLA's actually, believe it or not, outside the city, but they're doing some of that work.
They use tax bonds.
LHB is
got it.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So the goal or the plan was to give the money to LAHD to then go buy properties, or where was the distribution supposed to happen?
Okay, so some of the money was supposed to go for eviction defense and tenant, income relief and stuff like that. Um, so far, that's where 80% of the money has gone. And
Okay.
it's gone to a couple of sole source contracts with two nonprofits that there was not a competitive bid, but they're apparently competent nonprofits, and their job is to provide advice, eviction defense, stuff like this for
Okay.
low-income families. That was not. I think that was supposed to be a relatively small share of what happened with the money. It's now 80%.
Wow.
The rest of the money. Some was supposed to go to administration and other things, but the bulk of it was supposed to go to be allocated by LA Housing Department to nonprofit owners, developers of affordable housing. And,
Got
and,
it.
nonprofit includes also community land trusts,
Got it.
limited equity housing cooperatives. And so the way that money is typically put on the street is through what they call NOFAs, or notices of funding availability. And so it's a competitive process. And what's happened so far is we've had one NOFA under Measure ULA for, I think it was $56 million. All that money was awarded, but almost none of it has hit the streets. And the reason why is because it's proven far more complicated to close those deals than people thought, because they didn't think about these incompatibility issues.
Interesting. And does it have to do with the union labor, or is it the cost of construction, or what is it specifically that Fannie and Freddie won't lend on it?
Yeah, and by the way, it's not just Fannie and Freddie,
Sure,
but
yeah.
the thing that there are two things that Measure ULA says which are hugely problematic. One of them is what they call a non-subordination clause, and this is not unheard of in the affordable housing world. But basically, the ULA money says, I want to be the last money into a deal. And if you're building affordable housing, subsidized affordable housing, it's not like a normal commercial transaction where you're going to have equity, debt, and that's it. In an affordable housing transaction, you might literally have 5 or even 7 sources of debt layered on top of each other.
Bunch of mezz debt.
It's crazy. And what Measure ULA says is, I want to be the last one in, and I'm going to be senior in the on title to everything else.
Wow, the cap stack.
And yes, in the cap stack and title. So what that means is, if you are Bank of America or Freddie Mac or whatever, and you put a loan on a property, normally the person who places the loan on the property wants to be in first position on
first
title.
trustee, yeah.
Correct. And Measure ULA says, at least with respect to the affordability covenants, we're in first position.
Gosh.
And again, not unheard of.
Yeah.
And I'm getting really deep in the weeds here.
No.
What's different about Measure ULA is, in most cases, most housing agencies that try to do this, and they all want to do this, they will negotiate that away and soften it a little bit. Maybe what they'll say is, the affordability must stay at 60% of area median as long as we're there. But if there's a foreclosure, we'll allow it to float up to 80%. Just so the appraisal works out.
Got it.
Measure ULA does not allow that. So that really reduces the number of deals that will appraise.
Interesting.
The second thing it does, and this is an even bigger thing, it says that if you accept ULA money into your deal, your property can never, ever be sold to somebody who is not a nonprofit. And so you're Wells Fargo, and you make a loan to these things and you foreclose, and there are like 3 people who could possibly buy at an auction. No lender wants to be in that position where they can only sell to a nonprofit. And the truth is that most affordable housing out there has a for-profit component.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at companies like Related, which is one of the biggest owner developers of affordable housing. So many people live in affordable housing because of for-profit companies like Related or AmCal. And it's like, why would we not allow them to buy a distressed property to save it?
Yeah.
And so we would like to see Measure ULA fixed from that perspective as well. Again, the intent where they want the money to go to work and produce affordable housing, right on.
Yep.
But it needs more flexibility so it can actually be used.
And what is this? So the 2026, what is the language? Are you guys helping write this bill? Like how do we,
So what's happening in 2026?
yeah, what's going on there?
Okay, so there are those of us that believe in mend, don't end, Measure ULA, and my group, the Council of Infill Builders, is definitely in that category.
Yeah.
Just because if it really became the mansion tax that voters thought they were voting for, it would be a great permanent source of money for affordable housing. If it added the flexibility to actually place this money in a variety of deals, the money could go to work, jobs would be created, it'd be great. Again, as it stands right now, only $900,000 has actually been placed in projects. So people who are out there saying it's created 10,000 jobs and all this stuff are really lying.
Was it $1 billion that they projected?
Well, they projected it would be up to $1 billion a year. It's averaged about 300-ish million a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you said 900,000?
900,000 is all that's been spent on affordable housing.
Gosh.
Yeah. And people are out there lying, saying it's created 10,000 jobs, which is absurd.
Yeah. What jobs?
Yeah. For $91 a job, it's absurd. Anyway, so we want to fix it. It requires the people on the other side to admit that there's a problem and to engage in good faith as opposed to whatever. And there are people on the other side who are trying to engage in good faith. It's just kind of a toxic conversation right now. Now, then there's the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, who we all know, the people that wrote Proposition 13.
Yep.
They have said, you know what, these transfer taxes are a problem and we want to stop them. And now this is also getting pretty deep in the weeds, and you can cut this out.
No, we love the weeds. I live in the weeds.
Okay, right on.
Yeah.
So one of the reasons that transfer taxes have kind of exploded around California in the past several years is because of something called the upland loophole.
Okay.
This is what I tweeted about
Yep.
before. There was a 2017 case in Upland, California, involving a voter initiative that put a huge tax on new cannabis facilities. And the tax was challenged because if you read the California Constitution, it says that general taxes, which are taxes that charge more money than is used for a particular purpose, that there's sort of surplus money, can only be approved in a general election. And that was understood to apply across the board to all general taxes. But the people who defended against this challenge said, wait. If you read the Constitution, it says that, yes, this is true, but it also says that voters have the initiative power. And we really have to decide what's more powerful, this constraint on general taxes or voter initiatives. And the court said, you know what? Voter initiative power is more important. And because of that, if they want to approve it in a special election, which is, a lot of people don't show up at, they should be allowed to do that.
Wow.
And after Upland, people jumped through that window and said, okay, let's get a transfer tax in San Francisco, Proposition C. It was approved with 61% of the vote, which again, now let's go back to the California Constitution. It says that special taxes require a 2/3 vote of the people. And this was Proposition C was challenged in court. And what the court found was, well, sure, if a legislative body like a city council or a county board of supervisors or the state legislature, if they put the tax before voters, yes, it needs 2/3. But if the people put a tax before themselves, it only needs a simple majority. And so those two decisions were like, ding, 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 ding. And everybody who wanted a special transfer tax ran to put one on the ballot because they no longer had to hit that 2/3 threshold. They could do it with less. Measure ULA passed with less. And so this is, I believe in transfer taxes, well-designed transfer taxes. I believe that it kind of, beggars credulity, you could say, that that people that a tax that has been debated and analyzed and drafted and redrafted by an accountable legislative body in an open process, that needs 2/3 of the vote to pass. But if you and I just got a bunch of signatures and put some dumb tax on the ballot with no analysis, version 1.0, that only needs 51%. All we need is a good marketing slogan and that tax can pass. And it seems bizarre to me that the standard for you and me with version 1.0 and a pocket full of signatures, that we can do that, whereas the legislature with its analysts and experts and accountable people, they need a much higher standard. And so the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association has this initiative on the 2026 ballot.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to be gathering signatures for it. We are not part of that effort.
Yeah.
It basically closes the upland loophole. It says that every special tax, no matter whether it's Joe Schmo putting it on the ballot or a bunch of experts, it still requires 2/3. That's basically what this says.
And what's the early polling? What are people?
What I've heard is that this is polling extremely high.
So people realize that this is a mistake and they don't want this to be a thing anymore. You don't have to do your opinion, but that's
no. I mean, I hope you're correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I've not seen enough of the polling to know why it is people support it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got I'm kind of cynical about how a lot of initiative voting works. Just like people voted on ULA because it was called the mansion tax.
Yeah.
They didn't read the 29 pages. I'm assuming that because this is called the Local Taxpayer Protection Act to save Prop 13, people are probably thinking about that.
Use the same. Hey, look, you got to play the game. We'll play the game too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is hanging out. I mean, if it's possible to come to agreement with the various stakeholders about how to fix Measure USA, in the next few weeks, there are legislators in Sacramento who are willing to help carry that through and fix it.
Okay.
And if not, then I think a lot of the real estate industry is probably going to put its weight behind this.
And would that reverse Measure ULA? Because it didn't pass?
Yes. What it would do is, there were earlier versions of this that I read that would allow people to kind of repass these taxes. What this initiative as written would do is it would create a 2-year sunset period. So the tax would stay there for 2 years. All the money raised could be used, but it would then cap new transfer taxes at the statutory limit, which is 0.055%.
Got it.
Yeah.
Interesting. I guess we're going to have to wait and see what happens. There's a lot of new bills that have happened. It is almost impossible to keep up with the SBs, the ABs, the everything, right? It's ridiculous. One that has taken some steam and kind of takes us back to when you did small lot subdivisions is SB 1123.
Yeah.
Can you explain what SB 1123 is? And do you think that is a good thing? Is a bad thing? Give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I really like SB 1123. I was going to call it a lesby something. They should call it that.
Yes.
So there've been a ton of bills over the past several years to promote more infill housing, and also like 1123 promoting homeownership, which is great. Almost all of them have come. They call them Christmas tree bills, where lots of ornaments are hanging on them, to the point where they look good on paper, but they can't actually be used. And,
Interesting.
So much of what's gone through in Sacramento fits that bill, where it sounds good but can't be,
like SB 8 or SB 9.
SB 8, SB 9, all of
Yeah.
that. Again, there might be like onesie twosie projects
Sure.
that fit in, but yeah, a lot of these things just don't actually. Maybe they've got high. You have to get you have to sign a project labor agreement if you want to use it, or you have to include 20% affordable housing, and that just doesn't pencil.
Mm-hmm.
And things that again sound good. Like I want more affordable housing. I
Yeah.
want more jobs for union members. I just it just doesn't make sense for every project to carry that weight.
Sure.
And SB 1123 is an example of a bill that has fewer of those burdens. So that's pretty cool. And what it would do is allow you to build a 10-unit subdivision by right on many, many properties in the state,
Interesting.
including single family properties.
Wow.
Now, what's tricky about it is it can't be used in a very high risk fire zone. And if
Okay.
you look at the parts of LA where somebody like me or you might want to do this, like say Silver Lake
Uh-huh.
or Echo Park or Eagle Rock, those are almost entirely very high risk fire zones. So that's the thing. It also says that if you want to use it on single family properties, the home has to be vacant and not have been tenant occupied for the past, or I think not occupied if I recall, for the last 5 years.
Yeah.
And so proving that is highly burdensome. And there are other things in the bill that make it really difficult to use. And so I think it is very much on the right track. I think there will be a handful of properties that don't get knocked out by one of those poison pills. And I would love to use it. I'd love to see somebody else use it.
Yeah.
I think it's a great start.
What are some of the bills or the things that developers should be looking at? You were forward thinking, right, when these kitchens came up with the small lot subdivision in Echo Park when you built it. Are there any right now that people should be looking at to using right now?
Well, I mean, my favorite two bills of the past, I don't know, 5 years. I mean, one of them is one that the infill builders worked on for a decade in conjunction with groups like California YIMBY and Spur and Abundant Housing LA and many other champions. It was AB 2097, AB 2097, and that is a bill that
Limited local parking requirements.
check you out.
Hey,
Exactly.
took some notes.
Yeah, no, well done. I mean, basically what it did is it says that if you are near transit, you no longer have parking requirements. And for those of us in the industry, we know that parking requirements are not the same thing as how much parking are you going to build.
Yes.
It's a checkpoint at the city. And where parking requirements would really screw up a project is, well, first of all, I mean, I know if I'm building housing and I want to sell at a certain price point, the more parking I provide, the higher I can sell it for. And I'm not going to, I'm not going to not build any parking in most projects.
Yeah.
Similarly with retail, if you want to lease to Ralph's, you better have some parking.
Yeah.
If you want to lease to Trader Joe's, you better have a really badly designed small parking lot, but you got to have it.
Yep.
Where people were running into problems was if, you also know that if I'm building a small project, like a 30-unit project, let's just say for housing,
Yep.
all of my profit might be in the last 3 units.
Yep.
And I go to the city and the Department of Water and Power says, I'm gonna have to take 10 of those parking spaces for my transformer. And so I was parked to code, but those 10 parking spaces gone, that's 2 parking spaces per unit. I have to reduce 5 units unless I want to go spend 2 years having a variance battle with the city and a CEQA battle and all this stuff. And so that's how that's how parking requirements really screwed up projects.
Got
As a developer should be able to say, I'm going to go forward at 1.8 spaces per unit versus 2.0, and I'm going to keep those 3 units and hope for the best. And I'm going to, or 5 units.
Yeah.
or
I'll
whatever it
take
is.
the risk of leasing them up, or the value is going to maintain where it's at.
Exactly. It's a small enough number. I'll take that risk. And what the strict parking requirements did was say, sorry, that's not an option for you. And what AB 2097 did, and this is because of Assemblymember Laura Friedman, who's now Congresswoman Laura Friedman, who's a great urban visionary, it now says that in most of urban Los Angeles and in much of urban California, you can build however much or little parking you want and not have to get a variance. And so that is it's huge for restaurants that are opening up in retail spaces. It's huge for people doing residential. And it just removes one major barrier, one major risk point in the entitlement process. The other big thing is AB 130, which eliminates CEQA for most infill housing. Again, this was, Buffy Wicks, Scott Wiener, the governor. What that bill did was avoid the Christmas tree problem. They call it a clean CEQA reform, where it's not CEQA reform if you hire union labor, if you do this, if you do that. It's pure CEQA reform. It's saying urban housing is good. And it is an environmental mitigation, basically. And we should not be studying the impacts of every urban housing project. And so that's, is it going to suddenly turn the tap on urban housing in California? No,
Mm-hmm.
because San Francisco still has a very high transfer tax that's making things difficult. LA still has a very high transfer tax, as well as its inclusionary zoning. I mean, I should call it the linkage fee. Other things are driving up the cost. It's crazy parks fees. So there are lots of things that are still making housing unfeasible to build.
Mm-hmm.
But this has, basically rushed us to the next red light. And when we get through that, maybe we'll get housing.
What do you think is moving forward for California? Like it feels like right now there's a push to make it easier to build, which feels like the solution for everyone's problems when they're saying that we have a lack of housing,
Yeah.
right? Which we clearly do. They make it very difficult. They talk out of both sides of their mouth. Where do you think we're headed in terms of housing for LA?
So like if I were going to look at my crystal ball about like, it's so funny. It's so hard for me to answer that question because I don't like to think in predictions.
Uh-huh.
Because I'm always thinking like, given what the roadmap is, where am I going to turn?
Where do you tell your students, right? Your students are coming in and they want to be developers, and you've built, and I'm going to get into this next, but you've helped a ton of people become developers in the city of LA. You've taught them. What do you tell your students about, hey, Mr. Smith, I want to go develop housing in Los Angeles?
I mean, I tell them two things. One is it is really, really tough, and our city's rules, laws, and most importantly, culture do not promote this. And I also tell them that they are going to be part of the solution because it's going to be their hustle and their scrappiness that figures this out. So as long as they're going in with eyes wide open, that this is not going to be easy, um, and as long as they are committed to hustling their way to a solution, I'm a huge fan, and I think they can do it. I do think that's the answer.
Are most of the students, the young people who are coming through your program, are they excited about the future? Are they promotional? What do they come to you and say, hey, I want to be X, I want to do
Yeah,
this?
the Emirate program at USC is awesome.
Yeah.
If it's one of the reasons I do it because when I'm beating my head against a wall all day long, like it's easy to get dispirited, and then
Yeah.
you show up and there are these students who they're not slouches.
Yeah.
I mean they're mid-20s, 30s, sometimes younger, sometimes older, with real experience and, again, real hustle. And it actually gives me hope.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy it from that perspective. I mean, don't tell them, but like they're giving that to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I see in them is a real desire to stop at nothing until they can get something done. And a lot of them are interested in housing. A lot of them are actually moving beyond housing because they understand that it's, like I did at one point,
Yeah.
that this might not be the best business right now.
For you.
But some of them really are committed to it. And I've seen, one of the things I've seen some people do, in fact, some of my former students have gotten into this, is doing some of these ADU additions on existing multifamily properties as a value add.
Mm-hmm.
And they're actually pulling it off, and they're doing okay. And so that's a niche. That's kind of cool.
The ADU thing is very interesting. I would say most of the owners, because in a period from like 2012 to let's say like 2022, 2021,
Yeah.
most of the business plans was, value add, buyout, tenant buyouts, things like that. That's how you added value to these old properties, right? Now, because buyouts are so difficult, the way that you add value, you can force appreciation, is through these ADUs.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the owners, buyers, syndicators are looking for properties with excess land where they can build, these 8 ADUs, up to 8 ADUs per 8 units on these lots. And it feels like that's a cleaner path, or at least a path that you can see the end to, right? You know that you can get something and make something happen. So it's going to be interesting to see when these new, like SB 1123, I just saw a buddy of mine who's considering a project that they're working on doing that versus the ADUs, and where the money gets invested in. Because with ULA, for sure, people don't want to invest in these new construction properties unless it clearly makes a ton of sense, or the basis is so good you can write it out and hope for the best, right?
Right.
So it's interesting to see where that's going to be headed. What got you into teaching? Why do you teach?
Well, part of it is I like to keep my mind fresh, and I love, I don't know, it's just something in my personality that I kind of like demystifying things.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when I was playing music, like we talked about this before the taping started.
Yeah.
You know, I used to be in a band. That was my job. We were on Interscope Records. We were touring. We did the whole thing, and there was like, I don't know, like a 3-day period where I could get into most clubs in Los Angeles when I show up at the door. And I was never like a club guy,
Yeah.
but it was kind of cool to be able to get access and be like, oh, this is what everybody's freaking out about. Like,
Yeah.
no big deal.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm cool with that.
Did it, done it, good.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And so I like kind of getting access to these kind of arcane things
Mm-hmm.
and discovering what's real, what's not real, and sharing that with people, because I like it when people are in the world, super engaged, and doing it based on reality, not doing it based on theory.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just passionate about sharing that. I've found that real estate development students, for whatever reason, they also they're like, I mean, they're way into that. They're way into the reality. They don't want to know the theory. They want to know, show me what works, show me what doesn't work. I will figure out something and
Yeah.
do it. And it's a thrill for me. So I love that.
That's amazing. No, I've been able to speak to a couple of classes and students about brokerage, the brokerage side of the business, and people give younger generations a bad rap. I've found it to be the complete opposite.
Totally. I'm with you, man.
They want to hustle. They want to figure it out. They want to build a better life for themselves. And it's great to see that there's people who are willing to say, hey, I see what you're doing. I see what you're trying to accomplish. Let me share some of the wisdom things that I've learned, and you go be free. Do what your heart desires. Go be the biggest, baddest affordable housing developer, builder, whatever you want to do. But I'm going to give you the tools and some mistakes that I made and help you try to achieve those dreams.
100%. 100%.
Linguistics. I heard you or read that you got a linguistics degree.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by linguistics.
Nice.
Yeah, just on a psychology level, because I think people underestimate the power of words.
Yeah.
And the way that you phrase them, tonality, like the language is so important in everything that we do. I even saw something recently where with all of these new AI tools, you have the ability to speak like instead of typing, right?
Yeah.
And it unlocks a total new part of your brain and these LLMs to be able to articulate what you're wanting these to do. So can you tell me a little bit about linguistics, why you have a fascination with linguistics, and I guess how you use that in your everyday?
Wow. What a cool question. I've always loved it also. Like, I mean, like, I've always loved cities. I've always loved music. I've always loved linguistics. And a big part of it came from when I was little, and I would sit in my elementary school classes and they'd be teaching us, the rules of English. And I'd be like, that doesn't make sense. And they'd talk about like the rules of spelling, I before E, except after C, and all this stuff. I'm like, what the hell are you guys talking about? This doesn't make any sense. And I remember like getting so mad at my teachers. I actually got bad grades in school until I got to college because I hated bullshit. And so much of what I was being taught was bullshit. And when I took my first linguistics class, it was actually at UCSB where I started, and I transferred to UCLA. It blew my mind because it was one of the first times where they were saying, forget everything you think you know. We're going to teach you the study of what you actually know in your subconscious. And here's an example.
Okay.
Like when you say the word top, if I do it in a microphone, top, it like gets a little pop.
Yeah.
You could feel it. The top, there's air coming out of your mouth.
Plosive.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice.
I told you I like this stuff.
It's very cool. Yeah. And versus if you say the word stop, that's a different T than the T in top. One of them's got air, the other one doesn't. And they taught us this in the class. We all had paper in front of our mouth and seeing it flying back and forth. And like every native speaker of English knows that, but they've never been taught it. And if you've had a native speaker of Hindi, for example, the T in top and the T in stop are different sounds. They're not the same sound. They can hear and articulate those things in totally different contexts than a native speaker of English can. And I was like, okay, this is my jam.
Uh-huh.
Like, because and it's like how I approach everything. Like when people tell me how to do something, how to do real estate development, I don't want to know what we say we do. I want to know what we actually do. That's the kind of knowledge that I'm after.
Mhm.
And linguistics is basically just it happens to be about language, but the methodology is all like, don't tell me, show me.
Mhm.
And let's see if I get it right.
How did you get so well spoken?
Oh,
You're very well spoken.
as are you, by the way.
Well, thank you very much. Sometimes I feel like I have the millennial like tick. Sometimes I'll say like a few times. So I'm working on that, and the ums and whatnot. So I might join. My friend of mine is part of what is it, Toastmasters?
Oh yeah.
He said I should do Toastmasters. Said I would love to. How do you use? How did you get so well spoken?
It's very kind of you to say that. I've been having I guess growing up in a theatrical verbal family, and doing theater when I was young, and just talking a lot, and honestly, actually writing a lot. Because when I write, I wonder if you do this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll reread it 1,000 times, and I'll think about it. I'll hear it as I read it, and I want it to sound good in my brain.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've just spent a ton of time with words like that, on paper, going back and forth, sitting with them,
Yeah.
sleeping on them.
Would you suggest people start writing if they want to become better speakers?
Oh, absolutely. Of course. Well, I also want to say, like, whatever works for you, that's what you
Sure.
should do.
Sure.
I think, stuff like Toastmasters is great because it forces you into that environment.
Yeah.
You have to kind of be on your feet.
Uh-huh.
I think writing is a great way to do it if that works for you. Yeah.
What are some ways that you continuously learn? It seems like you're someone who always wants to continue to, one, be on the bleeding edge, but also learn from different verticals of life. So where do you go find your knowledge? How do you continue to learn? Where do you go for resources, things like that?
I love podcasts. I love Twitter.
Uh-huh.
I have mixed feelings about Twitter.
Yeah.
But it's a great when you connect with good people like you or Moses or
Yeah.
others. There's so many good people out there who are just sharing these little tidbits, and it's inspiring to me. Most importantly, talking to people. It's something that definitely stopped a lot during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
When we stopped going out, but I just feel like somehow the lights have come back on in the world, even in the last few months, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
where there's so many more social opportunities, so many more events, and just going out and being with people. If you ask them questions and you're curious, this is what you're doing professionally
Yeah.
right now, and you're super well spoken and asking
Thank
really
you.
smart, thoughtful questions. Like, start a podcast,
Yeah.
just asking questions. People have a lot to teach.
I started this podcast because one, I'm always very curious. I love the podcast medium. I'm a big fan. I listen whenever I'm on the road, I listen to podcasts. And I just like the median of conversation and spoken word and learning and listening, because it feels like the tonality of a podcast is just different from listening to a book or something like that.
For sure.
And what I've found is that this has forced me to become a better question asker. And the act of asking questions, one, to myself, even before the interview, there's parts of this where, for distribution, for the way that the podcast works, most of the click-through rates and the way that you actually get people to listen to your podcast on YouTube is through the thumbnail and the title.
Huh.
And it's interesting because I've noticed that, and I almost have to think like 3 levels ahead when I have a guest on.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the guest. Here's what they're doing. What's the title and the thumbnail going to be? What are some talking points that we need to have? How can I eloquently bring that up in the conversation? What questions would evoke something that I think would make for a good clip that then can, spread the podcast's message and things like that? There's all these layers to what has to happen when you start asking better questions. How do you reflect, or how do you ask better questions about the business, your teaching? What does reflection look like for you?
Oh man. Oof. I have to think about that one because that's a very deep question. It's
Yeah.
beautifully put.
Thank you.
Um, well, it really depends. I mean, I'll start with business. One of my favorite things in business is to hire new people because you don't have fresh eyes forever, and I'm always interested what people see when they're new and they're not kind of, filtering out all this stuff. So fresh eyes are very important to me, and people with fresh eyes are very
Mhm.
interesting to me. And so I like to get reflection from people like that in business.
Mhm.
Um, in other aspects of my life, I I mean, the question is how do I reflect?
How
How
do
do
you
I
yeah, like, because so I'll give you an example in
Yeah,
my life,
yeah,
right? So I'm a broker. I sell apartment buildings. A lot of my day is communicating,
sure.
talking to people. I'm discussing what's your problem here, what's your pain. I'm thinking through problem solution things, right? And the one way that I've been able to reflect is through I'll take some time on a weekend or something and I'll just write out like what happened during the week.
Hmm.
What could I have done better in that situation? Where did this take a turn where I wasn't expecting that, or I do more of a manual reflection, right? Kind of like a journaling exercise, I guess you could
Yeah, that's
say.
great.
I like to talk too, which so part of my reflection will grab wine, dinner, and just talk with friends and just have that, oh, something they said sparked something in me, that it's this kind of, you know, bounce back effect for me in the reflection period of it. And I'm curious if there's any rituals, things that you do specifically. I mean, it could be Twitter, right?
Yeah.
Maybe writing tweets is a reflective act for you to get your ideas out there, refine them, the language. I don't know if you have a blog or anything like that. Is there somewhere or sometime that you sit down during a week, during a month, during your everyday, where you can find that time to start to dig a little bit deeper?
Yeah, I really admire people with that discipline of journaling, and I don't have it myself. Twitter is a place where so I used to be a journalist also,
Okay.
and I used to write and edit this insider's real estate planning
Oh, wow.
publication called the Planning Report. And one of my favorite things to do was to edit interviews. We would do interviews with everybody, and they'd come back like, 7,000 words of,
Hmm.
and I'd have to cut it down to like 1,500 words. And I found, my inspiration for this was Playboy magazine interviews. And I don't know if you've ever read them.
I haven't. No.
There was that cliche in the '70s, like, "Oh, I get Playboy, but it's for the articles."
Uh-huh.
Well, and, I get it
Yeah.
because the writing was phenomenal,
Wow.
and you can get books. I have a book. It's a collection of the Playboy interviews, and they were so efficient and colorful and great. Like, just the way they used language was genius because it would sound like the person in the interview,
Hmm.
but there were no extra words. It got right to the point, led right to the next question. And I'm like, okay, I want my interviews to read like Playboy interviews.
Hmm.
And so going through that process of editing, um, does a lot of good for the brain, I think. And I do write a lot. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I write articles and I don't really write blog posts per se, but
Sure.
I do, yeah, I tweet and occasionally I'll publish an op-ed or something
Uh-huh.
like this. Um, I'll often write letters regarding legislation and that type of thing. And when I teach lecturing, having to do a presentation,
Uh,
that discipline of having to tell the story to a stranger or
uh-huh.
to a third party is a great way of translating. And I think, like, I mean, it goes back to dialogue, like we were talking about before,
Yeah.
like sitting down with your friends over wine, or, I'll sit down with my wife. My wife is an incredible, uh,
Yeah.
co-participant in that stuff because I'm lucky that I married somebody who I really respect and who's got a great brain. Um, and by the way, that was my daughter calling. She's the only one who can like push through my do not disturb. Um, yeah. So when you're talking to another person, it forces you to create a mental model of that person, and you can't help but experience your ideas and your words from a new perspective, even if they're just like sitting there stone faced.
Mm-hmm.
Just the fact that you're creating that model in your head, and that new angle on yourself reveals all kinds of things, and that's probably most of what I do.
I love that. Before we wrap up, I always like to ask a question of, with your knowledge, right? You have the knowledge that you have today. You get to speak to a lot of 20 and young people, 30-year-olds, right, who are beginning their career, want to
Yeah.
create something for their career. If Mott Smith is 22 years old and he had to start over, but you have the knowledge you have today, right? What would you do? What do you think your path would be? Or at least, where do you think the direction you'd want to head into for your career?
So I don't know that my direction would have been any different, because I can't really imagine a different life than I've had.
Mm-hmm.
And my father said to me once when I was little, like I think I was complaining about some activity that I didn't really want to do or whatever, and he was like, I've always said to myself that if I'm not getting something out of the experience I'm having, that's on me. And I really took that to heart, and it's defined my life. Like, until I started my company, I really never had the job that I wanted to have. I had jobs that were good enough, and I mean, even playing bass in a rock band wasn't exactly. I wanted to be a real estate developer,
Yeah.
uh, and but every single job I've had has really taught me something. And, it could be something abstract, like, something about people. Like, being in the rock band taught me a lot about the politics of business decision making, and why it
Mhm.
was our A&R guy didn't want to spend the money to market our record, even though we had all this feedback it was going to sell, because he would have gotten in trouble if he had spent too much money. So for him, don't spend the money, don't put it out. That was an important lesson in business and
Mhm.
politics. Um, when I worked for LA Unified School District, there was a ton I learned. That was probably the most educational job, no pun intended,
Yeah.
I've ever had. One of the most important things I learned was about environmental law, because I had to work on CEQA
Mhm.
and some workarounds to CEQA, and I had access to the best lawyers in the state, all of whom were working, on retainer for the LA Unified School District. And that was like a PhD in CEQA from the best teachers I could possibly imagine. So that was a really concrete thing
Mhm.
that I got from that job. And so I don't know that I think differently. I guess if I could give advice to myself, it's that I would trust my gut more sooner. That there are a lot of situations where, which called for decisive action, like a bad relationship or an opportunity that I should jump on,
Mhm.
that I would hedge a little bit, because I didn't have the life experience yet to know that, something like this doesn't come around all the time, or this relationship is not going to get any better.
Mhm.
And if I could give myself one piece of advice, it's that it's to trust my gut when something's over, and to trust my gut when something's possible.
Mott, thank you very much for being here.
Hey, my
This was
pleasure. It was
amazing.
really
Thank
fun.
you.